So the Bank of Canada has cut interest rates yet again. Canada is striking back with its own tariff measures in Trump's trade war that he has launched against the world. Let's get more from David Rosenberg, one of our regulars. He reckons that the current environment looks similar to 1984. Now, 1984, I have to cast my mind back. Brian Mulroney became prime minister that year, and he pushed through the free trade agreement, for example.
Well, he pushed through the free trade agreement years later, and of course, working with Ronald Reagan and then George H.W. Bush. But the comparison I was drawing was how John Turner was the white knight coming from Bay Street at that point and enjoyed a honeymoon period. And the next thing you know, after the election, the Tories swept. Mm-hmm. So I was drawing the comparison really just to what's happening right now with Mark Carney's honeymoon period.
John Turner emerged as a liberal
leader, that's right, replacing Pierre Trudeau.
Oh my gosh, you're bringing there are some interesting
I'm old
echoes.
enough to remember that, true enough. You should be too.
Oh, I do remember, yeah. I think I just missed Trudeau as Prime Minister. Of course, I got to Canada in '86. But I'd heard of Trudeau, even in my 20s. Pierre Trudeau, he had a global impact, or an image anyway. But anyway, let's move on to the current. You reckon that so far Canada has had an inadequate response to to Trump's tariffs?
I'm very disappointed because, well, firstly, I wouldn't be wasting time as an elected official in Canada talking about Donald Trump anymore. I wouldn't talk about Donald Trump. I wouldn't call him names. I wouldn't make a meeting with him contingent on him refraining from insulting us anymore or talking about annexation. I would really just stop talking about Trump. And I would stop engaging in a tit-for-tat tariff war with the United States because it's not a war we're going to win, okay? We're putting tariffs on their products is only going to make matters worse for consumers here in Canada at a time when there's the potential where we're going to lose 400,000 jobs if Trump comes through with all of his tariff actions against our country. The last thing that the consumer needs is an added squeeze on their incomes from tariff action.
How many jobs did you say, David? Sorry.
400,000. And that would take the unemployment rate up towards 8%. I would actually engage in trade action, but where it hurts. I said before on BNN last week at a different interview, I said, when the bully in the schoolyard punches you in the eye, you don't punch back, you go burn down his house, okay? So we're trying to get into a fight with the bully in the schoolyard. No. And tariffs, tit-for-tat tariffs, not the answer. And you look at me like, what's he talking about?
How do we fight back?
Well, you do it strategically through either export bans or export taxes. Let them pay. Why should consumers here pay back because we're going to retaliate on tariffs? Now, we need the U.S. We know that. We ship 20% of our GDP south of the border. But the U.S. also needs us strategically, especially for critical minerals. Where are they going to get their potash? Where are they going to get their uranium, their nickel, their aluminum, their electricity? Like, I thought that Doug Ford was on the right track with the export tax on electricity, then he pulled back. Why? Because he's going to get a phone call from Howard Lutnick. Look, you can't believe a word that the White House is saying. Okay, you brought up at the beginning of the show about the USMCA. Donald Trump signed that in 2018, and at the time he boasted that it was the best trade deal anybody has ever signed, and now he's abrogating it. And of course, the goalposts are shifting all the time. You cannot believe a word coming out of the White House. So I don't even believe we should be negotiating anything with the White House. Let him raise his tariffs. He's going to dig his own hole because there's going to be an inflation backlash in the United States, and consumers are not really prepared for it. At least in Canada, I'd say, Canadians are braced for very tough times ahead. Americans did not vote last November for, quotes, pain or disturbance or whatever it is Donald Trump calls it. They're not prepared for any pain at all. I think that we're prepared for it. And so the point I'm making is that we should be strategic. And I'm talking about not tariffs. Let them pay export taxes on stuff that is critical to their industry or outright export bans.
What about oil, David? 4 million barrels a day, roughly, we sell to them. Would you put an export tax on crude?
No, well, that's more problematic. But why are we offering a discount on our heavy oil into the U.S.? Maybe we should consider removing the discount on oil into the U.S. I might carve out oil, and of course...
Why is that? Because it's so vital?
Well, what are you going to do with the oil that we're not going to export into the United States? What are we going to do with that? Where's it going to go? But there's other things that the U.S. needs. Now,
potash is a biggie. Yeah.
Well, yeah, where are they going to get that from? Ukraine, all of a sudden? So they need that to grow their crops. There's things we could do that will hurt the U.S. There's really nothing we could do that's going to make it as bad as it is here.
Yeah.
But Americans did not vote in November for any pain whatsoever, and we could make them actually feel at least a little bit of pain. The other part is, what's the Europe doing right now, the EU? They're trying to find endogenous ways to grow their economy. Germany is finally getting rid of the fiscal constraints. They're going to embark on fiscal stimulus that's going to boost military spending out of necessity. Not just that, but also infrastructure. India right now is embarking on plans to dramatically reduce their dependence on foreign energy, pipeline expansion, oil and gas expansion in India. You look around the world, and countries are trying to find a way to wean themselves off their dependence, especially on the United States. Okay, that's necessity. The question is, what are we doing endogenously? We're just hitting back Donald Trump insult for insult. It's not going to do anything for us. Tariff for tariff. That's not going to help our country. I said, okay, selective export taxes, export bans on stuff they need. Okay, that's going to wake up quite a few people.
What about aluminum? Would you?
Yes, that's what I'm talking about.
Whoa, that would be.
We have to look. I said you got to
aggressive. An export ban on aluminum.
We are in an economic war. We're in an economic war right now, not a military war, an economic war. Okay, so you don't bring a butter knife to a gunfight. So that's basically what we have to do. We have to hit back hard. One thing, we have two advantages in Canada, okay? One of them is the Bank of Canada. The Bank of Canada should be cutting rates a lot more aggressively, weakening the Canadian dollar a lot more aggressively. I know that Tiff Macklem comes on and says, well, monetary policy is not actually an effective antidote against a trade war, but we are going to need the interest rate relief, and we're going to need a weaker Canadian dollar. So the Bank of Canada can do what the Fed can't do, because the Fed right now is hamstrung. They have more an inflation problem than we do. They have a 4% unemployment rate. We're closer to 7%. We have more spare capacity. The Bank of Canada's got more latitude to use monetary policy. Point number one. What about fiscal policy? And all I heard at the Liberal convention was all about Donald Trump. Donald Trump this, Donald Trump that. Where is our domestic fiscal strategy? We haven't had a government. We still don't have a government. So we're just talking about tit-for-tat tariffs. Where is our endogenous fiscal policy to help cushion the blow?
You want to see a stimulus package along the lines of COVID?
Not spending, okay? Big tax cuts, okay? Big tax cuts. One of the largest mistakes that the Trudeau government made was after 2017, when Trump cut the top corporate tax rate to 21%, we did nothing. And it stuck. The effective tax rate with provincial abatements sits at 28%. Why do you think we're seeing relentless capital outflows out of this country? We are tax uncompetitive. And all I'm hearing again coming out of the convention is we are the party for the people. We're the party of the people. But what is the business sector? The business sector is made up of people. People own these businesses, they manage these businesses, and we are uncompetitive. We have to actually right now get aggressive. We have to bring our corporate tax rates not just to U.S. levels, but below U.S. levels. I would even recommend that we eliminate capital gains taxes. We have to stimulate what's been lacking in this country for the past decade, Andy, which is business formation and stemming. Do you know, we talk about net capital outflows, net direct investment outflows out of Canada. The problem has not been capital coming into Canada, okay? The problem has been in the past 10 years, $1 trillion of Canadian physical capital, direct investment, $1 trillion in 10 years has left the country. So what are we going to do? We have the room. Everybody belly aches about the fiscal side. We actually have one of the strongest fiscal positions in the OECD. The deficit is, God forbid, 1.5% of GDP. Where is all this belly aching and angst and anxiety over the Canadian federal balance sheet? 1.5% deficit GDP. Where is it in the U.S.? It's north of 6%.
Are you serious?
They can't even. Look, they have a debt to GDP ratio of 100%. In Canada, even with the provinces, it's 80%, but the federal government debt ratio is barely more than 40%. People don't realize that our federal fiscal finances are in better shape than Germany. And look what Germany is doing. Now, they're doing it on the spending side. We have to dramatically cut taxes. Okay, we go back to 1984. Brian Mulroney, you brought that up at the beginning. What did he get elected on? Deregulation, which we have to do as well, and tax reform.
And he brought in a sales tax. That was a big
That
move.
was like way at the end of his tenure. We're talking about 1984, not 1989 and 1990. And that replaced the manufactured sales tax. That was actually, the Liberals campaigned in 1993 to get rid of the GST.
I never did.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
So in any event, we should be talking right now, okay, not about name calling with Trump, okay, that's not going to get us anywhere. Tit-for-tat tariffs is so uncreative and unimaginative, and it's not going to help out the Canadian household. I think that we have to actually, right away, convene Parliament, emergency session, and embark on a major tax cut. Now, I'm talking about a major tax cut for the business sector. Oh, people say, oh, well, the business sector, what a right-wing nutbar Rosenberg is. The business sector in this country employs 2/3 of the people in the workforce.
Let me ask you something here, because you put something in my head. Ireland did very well with essentially zero tax for foreign companies. Do you think Canada should think about something like that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. What I'm talking about is what they should have done back in 2017, 2018. We never should have let our tax gap in the business sector. Oh, there's that word again, businesses. I mean, I get this all the time, but I guess it doesn't play in Peoria. You got to talk about the people. I keep on telling, that 2/3 of the people are employed by the business sector. And we have to prevent what's going to happen if we don't embark on a massive tax cut campaign. And it's going to be advertised so that people understand how important it's going to be to prevent capital flight out of the country with these tariff increases. And this attempt by Trump is to relocate production in the United States. We could fight back with fiscal policy. They can't, in the United States, you see what's happening in Congress, they can't even get their stopgap funding measure through, okay? But if we either get a minority government, and Liberals and Conservatives can agree on this, or we get a majority government. So we have to think right away, because we can't do it on spending. The lags are too long. But tax cuts will be felt right away.